Hi everybody, it's Claire Paris with Paris Group Realty LLC in Portland, Oregon. And today on our Ask an Expert series, we have PJ of Clever Duck Inspections to show you all things involved in a home inspection. PJ, take it away.
Hi, I'm PJ with Clever Duck Inspections, and we'll be doing the interior of the house today with the utility room, the kitchen, and the bathroom. Let's jump in. All right, here we are in the kitchen. I'll take you through what's involved in home inspecting a kitchen. So we've got all of the appliances. I'm going to make sure they're working correctly. Check the refrigerator and the freezer, make sure they're working. Check the ice maker, water dispenser, anything like that. I'll check the range and the stovetop, make sure they're all heating up the way they should, that the fan is working the way it should. I'll check the plumbing underneath the sink. I'll take my handy dandy voltage tester and I'll check all of the outlets, make sure they're all working correctly, and trip all of the GFCIs, make sure they are tripping the way that they should so they're protecting people and that they're resetting correctly. Then we take a look underneath the sink and make sure everything is plumbed correctly and that the garbage disposal and the dishwasher are set up the way they should be. Then we're going to take a look at all the shelves and the cabinets, make sure everything's working correctly there. Now let's take a look at the utility room. All right, here we are in the utility room. So in this utility room, we've got the electrical panel, we've got a really cool heat pump water heater, and we've got the heat recovery unit. When I'm looking at the electrical panel, first of all, I'm going to take the dead front off. That's this big piece of metal here. I'm going to look at the wiring inside, see if you have aluminum or copper wiring. If you do have aluminum wiring in an older house, that could be a fire concern. There may be some things you can do to reduce that risk. And that's something you want to know about when you're buying a house. I'm going to go through and make sure that all the breakers are wired correctly, that the panel isn't crowded or overloaded, and that there aren't like double taps, like they've put too many wires underneath one breaker. I'll check all of the GFCI and AFCI breakers and make sure they're operating correctly. Those are safety mechanisms that you want to have working. And just generally make sure everything's ship-shape over here. Let's look at the water heater. In Oregon, you want to make sure that you have earthquake strapping on your water heaters. And then I'll look at all the plumbing, make sure everything's plumbed correctly. This is your TPR valve over here. This has about 13 rules about how it should be installed. So I'm going to make sure that all of those rules are followed. We'll take a look at if it's a gas water heater in a garage. If it's an older gas water heater, I'm going to make sure it's elevated off the floor so it doesn't ignite the fumes in the garage. All right, from the water heater, looking at the heat recovery unit. This is where most homes are going to have a furnace. I'm going to look at the age of it. I'm going to look at how it's installed. And then number one thing I'm seeing here is we've got duct tape on the ducts. Fun fact, duct tape shouldn't be on ducts. It can't take the heat. All right, let's move on to the bathroom. Here we are in the bathroom. So I'll look at the plumbing similar to how I looked at the plumbing in the kitchen. I'll check all the taps. I'll check all the hardware, make sure nothing's loose, and make sure everything's functioning correctly. I'll look underneath the sink and make sure that the trap is oriented correctly and that it's not a flexible line. Sometimes we find the flexible lines and those just trap hair like you wouldn't believe. So we want to make sure those aren't there. Just because they sell something at Home Depot doesn't mean it's up to code. And then I'll come over to the toilet. We do a fun little move here and make sure that the toilet isn't loose at the seal at the floor. If the toilet wiggles when you do this, it could indicate a loose wax seal and that could cause a leak. Then we'll come over to the shower and we want to make sure that the shower is not only functioning correctly, but it's not going to leak water all over the floor when you use it. So we're going to do this fun little move here to try not to get soaked. And we test the shower and let it actually run up against the wall, because that's going to happen when you take a shower, and you don't want water to be leaking out there when you take a shower. And this one actually is a little wet, so that's something I'll tell Claire about. That's the bathroom. So that gives you an idea of some of the things we're looking for in a home inspection. Now let's go check back in with Claire.
So PJ, what'd you find?
I found a couple little things.
Okay.
They'll all be in your report. A typical report is around 50 to 70 pages. So there's going to be a lot of little things. There'll be maintenance items and maybe some larger things.
Okay, so we're gonna take that report that PJ so kindly gave us and we're gonna use it to negotiate on your behalf, buyers. We're gonna ask for either closing costs or price reduction or even work to be done before closing. Now sellers, you got a sneak preview into what happens while you're gone and out of the house for 4 hours. I hope it's been super informative. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's Ask an Expert, and we'll see you soon.